nation where we are busy putting death out of business. Mr. Kerecz, Mr. Kerecz, how are you? You've
Yes.
bought
How you
me
doing, Steele?
good, good. You've bought me a magician. A magician. What have
Yes,
you
I
done this
have.
time?
Well, maybe I didn't bring you a magician. Maybe I actually brought you a wizard. Yes, a wizard maybe. Maybe he's a
Well,
level 9 wizard.
all right. So yeah, so it's Mr. Kerecz, and we all know him from the USTP primary. Ran a fantastic campaign. And Caine, you're a magician. Tell us all about
Yes,
it.
sir.
Tell us who you are.
Yeah. So my name is Trenton Caine. I'm a professional magician. I've been working as a magician professionally for about 15 years now. And I started off at a young age, seeing some magic, and kind of escalated throughout my childhood and adolescence and then college. And I landed myself now into Hollywood, California. I'm living here entertaining for anyone and everyone who will watch. My clientele kind of gauges in between doing private parties for kids, adults, concerts, venues like that. So magic is a part of my life, man. I'm looking forward to. Have you ever interviewed a magician before? Do you know anything about us?
No, not really. I know Harry Houdini is a very interesting person in history. Escaping boxes and all sorts of crazy stuff. That's illusion, and illusion is fantastic as well, because illusion is most of the primary object, right? So I look at my hand; it's so full over here, while you're doing something sneaky over there. Harry, and then the other ones, Penn and Teller, these libertarian guys, they went around India, they did the India documentary. I thought those guys were pretty funny, and they do huge stages, and they do a lot of really interesting things, and I'm pretty sure that they would be right up your alley of where you're trying to go. There's a few different, and there was the movie, The Illusionist. And that was a great movie. That was.
I'm actually glad you said The Illusionist. There's two that came out during that time. One was The Prestige, and the other one was The Illusionist. And my go-to is The Illusionist. A lot of magic and mystery, and really science kind of came interconnected with that movie to bring about, in my opinion, how magic truly is. We had Nikola Tesla. He was a big component, and the history of him was a part of The Illusionist. So I'm actually really happy you said The Illusionist more than The Prestige, because that's how I kind of feel life is.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's delve into what made you excited about magic. I remember I went to the library and I got excited about magic for about a day, and I started I got the book out, and I was looking at all the napkin tricks, and I was doing the folding, and I thought, nah, screw this, and I stopped. And but what sustains your sort of interest? What sustains somebody's interest in magic and entertainment, and being in that public forum all the time? I do this, but I don't really consider it a public forum. I just sort of talk on this thing with Mr. Kerecz, and we talk about space, and that's about it. But what sustains your energy, and what makes you enthusiastic to jump out of bed in the morning and go, I wanna entertain people, I wanna trick people, I wanna do all the things you do that are so cool in the realm of magic?
I'm glad you asked that, and I honestly think that my viewpoint and my relationship with my life as a magician is a lot different than others may have. When I was younger, I grew up in the Midwest of the U.S., and this was a time where you could walk to the plane. So I was about 5 years old, and our family was escorting my father to the plane terminal, and there was a magician in the terminal performing magic, and I immediately was drawn to him, and I went running up, and I said, "What is this?" And he began to produce a cloth out of the air and move these balls around. He goes, "It's magic." And immediately I knew exactly what that language was. There was something inside of me that that I knew. Like I knew what it was. So we dropped my father off, and as we were exiting the airport, I ran back up to the magician, and I saw a couple of more tricks. And like most magicians, this is kind of where we all kind of have a similar story. My grandmother got me a magic kit when I was younger, and it kind of inspired me to learn. But really, the biggest deal was that our family moved a lot, and we would go from state to state about every 2 years. And in every state that I lived in, there was actually a magician who would take me under their wing and assist and teach me some magic. And I utilized magic as a tool to communicate with kids at school, and it was kind of like an icebreaker that I would use. It wasn't until about 12 years old or so, I was visiting with my grandmother in Michigan, and I was walking down the street by myself, and I see this old brick and mortar shop, and it said magic. And I walked in, and it was probably one of the last magic shops that are still standing. And I went inside, and I met this gentleman named Jim Parks, and I pleaded with him to teach me magic. I would go back every day during that summer, sit in there. And over time, he actually allowed me to come behind the shelves and be a demonstrator of the art of magic. And in fact, we actually have, in a place called Caine, Michigan, it's known as the magic capital of the world. And they hold a magic convention there every year. But really, magic, because of that moment that I experienced at a young age, I believed it was real. And to this day, I still do believe that magic is real. And presently, the most magic that you do happen to see today is about 250 years old. It started with the magician with the top hat and the cane, and there used to be a real big aspect of busking or street performers in France who would entertain the audiences. But in my opinion, there was a huge distance of the written work of magic that we have today and what happened prior. And I believe that it was the prior magic that was really the influence that kind of started the aspect, and truly it was science, because having the higher form of knowledge to be able to convince people of what was going on meant that you had to study not only your surroundings but various methods in order to achieve one outcome that was in your favor as the magician. Does that kind of start off where we're going in the right direction?
That's start off. I mean, that's emotional. I mean, that's a bestseller right there. I mean, that's very cool. I like this notion that you believed it was real, and even though you know all the sort of backroom tricks that go on, and the preparation and the linguistic tricks and all that, I mean, you can still think that it's real, and that's pretty cool, because that's some talent. Mr. Kerecz, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I love in one of the Thor movies, I can't think if it was the second one, I think it might have been the second one, but he says, our technology here you see as science. And it kind of, there is that crossover where what we have as science today, things that people did in the past they might have known really was science, were perceived as magic. So science and magic, there is a blurring at times, and just like with the Transhumanistic Society, where they're working towards trying to make longevity a main issue. I mean, at one time that kind of thinking was considered magic, not science.
It was very well. It was magical. Here's a story that I go by. So there was a time when the first religion was magic, meaning that these individuals would study their surroundings here on Earth, So then they became the study of the earth, the wind, the fire, and the water. And then the focal point of the understanding how in our planet and how it was working, it held this chalice of information and knowledge, and a very select few people had this. And then over our time periods, there have been similar stories that went on and on about how this information was occurred. Then it went into alchemy, the study of turning lead into gold or being able to have a longevity of life. And this was a science that only the select few were able to focus. And they would learn how to heal their bodies or to use the certain foods and fruits of the earth to feed themselves. And it was supposedly, through the stories, it was actually came from the above aspect, where the information was brought down to us by these intellectual beings from the stars. And these intellectual beings gave us the information so that we could move forward. So then, I mean, for instance, I don't mean to get off bat, there was this Pythagoras. He was a cult leader. This man had this thing called the Pythagorean heritage, and it was young
science of mathematics.
The science of mathematics. Young teenagers would sit together, and their whole objective would be to observe their environment and configure how everything from a plant to the color could be represented by a full-on number. And it was the science of mathematics, and in my opinion today, that is our full-blown language that is the universal aspect.
Yeah, that's a good point, because the people of yesterday that were considered advisors or mazes and wizards were probably just the scientific men of the time.
They were very much the scientific men of the time, and the women as well. It was a very dual thing.
Even Ben Franklin, probably a few hundred years earlier, Ben Franklin probably would have been thought of as a wizard, not as a scientist.
Sir Isaac Newton, the gentleman who discovered the law of gravity, he was a big focal scientist who studied alchemy and essentially transforming lead into gold. And through his studies, he was able to discover the law of gravity, which, in my opinion, I think is completely fascinating, because he was a magician as well as a wizard. Some may call and some may not. Hopefully, there's not too many magicians listening, because they'll be like, "Oh, this guy." Da, 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 da. But this is all in my opinion. Really, kind of, I took this knowledge, and it was my main focal point, and this is what I kind of flew into, and I used this observational aspect and the thought of ideology to transform and create my magic experience. I so ardently believe that, with just the thoughtness, the idea of thought, you can transform and rejuvenate your body on a molecular structure. So that's kind of where the craziness of a magician that I'm at.
The power of will, the suggestion of your mind on your body, which I think is somewhat true. But you've also studied some nutrition and stuff, though, too.
I have studied nutrition. I spent a lot of time right when I came down to Hollywood. I did an internship with a dietitian and kinesiologist and a physician, and our entire objective was to go to the clients and other physicians and give them scientific data that showed that concentrated nutrition with peer-reviewed journals had the ability to rejuvenate the body.
So that ties in with the longevity, see?
100%.
So I have a question for everybody here. Now, Steele, who is your favorite magician?
Who's my favorite magician? Probably Houdini, I guess. I mean,
Houdini?
Like explicit magician, yeah.
I do like Penn and Teller. I've seen them live and talked to them. I do. Well, I'll talk to one of them. Since one of them doesn't talk, but I know he really does. Back when I was younger, it was like Blackwell Jr. He used to be on TV a lot.
Blackstone Jr., yeah.
Blackstone, that's it. And the funny thing is, when me and Trenton were at the Magic Castle together, the book that was there on the shelf, remember, I don't know if you remember me telling you in this thing, was the first book of magic I owned as a kid. If you remember that oversized magic book, I can't even. You knew who it was by
Mark
then,
Wilson's Complete Course of Magic. That must have been.
Yes, and that's quite a book. That book's been out there for quite a while, actually. Yeah. I had that since probably late grade school. So don't want to date him and myself, but that was interesting to me that book's still about. It's a good book. It's a good basic book on some basic magic.
Well, tell me, what are you thinking about?
So I like this notion that in history, that they started out as alchemists and wizards and witches and stuff because they were mixing up potions, or they were devising stratagems to analyze life structures and formulate that in mathematical language. What I was going to say is, when you said something that really struck me is when you said you first saw magic and it resonated with you on a communication base. What I thought is, I just had Dr. Catherine on, who's basically built a machine now that can interpret, say, autism, right? The inner worlds of autists. And for me, a huge thing about autism and Asperger's syndrome as well is that people find their niche and their way to communicate to the world a message, a far more complex message that they can't actually communicate to them using the tools of language, whether that be English or Arabic or Hindi or Chinese, these normal communicative methods that people have. So somebody says, I feel like I want to tell God that I really like him, and they devise a cathedral, and that's a communication method of saying I really, really appreciate God, or I have something intellectual to say, but I can't really say it because no one wants to hear me at the dinner table, so I'm going to write the Encyclopedia Britannica or something. So I struck me as immediately off the bat as a communication thesis. That you have found a way to communicate far more complex messages on an intrapersonal and one-to-one and one-to-mass communication level, because you said you used it as an icebreaker at school, right? And that's kind of interesting because people are either on autistic or Asperger's level syndrome on these spectrums. They do find it hard to communicate with people on those levels because they want to talk about very abrupt things. They want to start talking about their experiences with their certain niche, whatever that niche is, whether that be magic or space or astronomy or some sort of select topic or mathematics. And the small talk that people talk about, which is something that confuses me all the time as well as exhausting because it's so mundane and I can't actually wrap my head around it most of the time. It's something to go around and it's something to avoid. And I just find that really interesting that it struck you as a communication level, and you've taken that communication method out and you can push that way out to much larger topics than just simply an illusionist-based, magician-based emphasis on, on making people smile and having that interaction. It's much bigger than that. Although that when people receive a magic trick, when you do a magic trick to me, whether it's a card trick or something with water, or or you get out of a box, or you do a coin trick, or whatever it happens to be, whatever the cool trick is, the person who's receiving that is elated. They feel special. They feel entertained. They feel a sort of specialness about them, and I think that's a really fun. But it's also a really, really, really deep sense of communication. What do you think?
It's there's a form of interpersonal communication going on right there. And if there was a device that was present right now that I could take my hand and place it there, and the other individual could as well, and just have thought transform so we don't have to use the words, I would love to use it. But the reason why I like the magic so much is because there is a form of communication that's going on energetically between the two individuals. So if I were to perform magic for John versus performing magic for you, or even an individual who had autism, immediately, right when I go to begin, I know how to change my dialect, my internal dialect, for it to be on a wavelength that there will be an understanding. And at that moment, I can also direct where the conversation of the magic going on. Meaning with magic, you may see a trick and you see it right away, but I'm 3 or 4 steps right ahead. So there will be times when an individual will jump in and I have to guide the conversation around to have the outcome be in our favor versus just in mine. So there's a bubble that kind of comes into play. And it's that bubble that comes into play where there's in-depth communication going on that you can feel internally. So if there was more of a way to have everyone feel that continuously, I think there'd be a better communication going on amongst all of us than the havoc that's going on in the world today,
Oh yeah, absolutely. And when the wrong people get into that sort of communication level, when they're mean and nasty, they get into the wrong seats of power or something. They communicate on a destructive level as opposed to a constructive level, which is, what we're trying to do here is constructive communication. We're trying to build up these technologies and these conversations around these technologies that are going to enhance the human experience. And mind-to-mind telepathy is one of those technologies. Absolutely. Autismo, Dr. Catherine's work, so that the internal world of autistic and people with autism, will become a reality. That communication method will become a reality. Absolutely. So let's try. Can we try? Can we try a magic trick? Have you got any? Can we do the card one, or what can we do?
I'll show you a little classic trick. This
Mr. Kerecz, I'll give you the hot seat.
I'm gonna give you a little bit of a visual here.
You gonna give me the what? The hot seat or what?
Yeah. You can take this one.
No, you can take this since you want to be part of the magic trip seal.
I think what we'll do is we'll allow you guys to observe kind of.
There we go. That's good.
Of what kind of magic that goes on. So, Harry Houdini was known as the King of Cards. However, he was an individual who was confused by a very simple trick that occurred. And we say it's kind of a simple trick today, but this was known as a trick that fooled Houdini. So if we have a card displayed and placing it onto the top into the center, you can take the next one and have it come back. So once again for you, just in case, just to clarify, we have a normal deck of 88 playing cards. 88 cards in the deck. You can have an individual choose the top card, place into the center, and if you look closely, comes right back to the top. So that was the trick that was known to have fooled Houdini. It was actually happened right here out on the Santa Monica Pier quite a while ago. Houdini used to have just a few years back. Houdini has a mansion up here in Laurel Canyon, which I had the honor to actually perform in last month. So yes, it's called the Harry Houdini Estate, and he had 2 sides of the road. One was his estate, and one was his personal home. And so he would do shows in town, and he would vacation down in Santa Monica. But as for tricks, right there, I mean, that simplistic. That was a card manipulation aspect, and it is a fact of hand being quicker than the eye, but also where I'm converting the attention to. So if we were to be in public together, and I were to give that demonstration, it would have been additional sequences, and could appear in your pocket right there afterwards.
Now, I have an interesting question for you, Tron. We talk about technology here, about extending people's lives and other things to talk with the humanistic party, transhumanistic party. My question is, how do you see science affecting magic? I mean, because I guess there can be more scientific tricks and stuff, and how do you see it affecting your profession as a magician?
That's actually an incredible question. A huge thing that us magicians talk about. Well, not us magicians, but the older gentlemen like yourself.
Hey now.
Just kidding. The question is, what magician, who is going to come and bring us the new magic? Who's going to change the game and the way that magic is performed and perceived by all? And it wasn't until this past conference that I attended this summer in Las Vegas called Magic Live that we really got into the understanding of how technology can assist the magician. There was some talk about having technology totally take over and, just making yourself a complete computer replica of you and having them being able to interact with your surroundings. But, I think that form of technology would be much later. However, a lot of magicians today we're taking the advantage of science and technology and incorporating them into our acts to create newer and better illusions. For instance, you could stand 20, 40 feet away and have a card jump out of a box. There was this brings me to an idea, a non-computer aspect, but we had this illusion called the Pepper's Ghost illusion, and it was originally developed in 1836. But a gentleman in the 1960s had the idea to create a hologram, and he proposed the hologram to Walt Disney, and it's the main premise of
The Haunted Castle.
the Haunted Mansion. Yeah.
Haunted Mansion, that's it. Yeah.
But in '63, the gentleman who worked for the props aspect, a magician came to him and said, that's called the Pepper's Ghost illusion. It was actually invented like 120 years before. So we still use that technology today for our large stage shows where we can make a hologram appear on stage, utilizing the technology of that aspect. You all can look it up if you're interested.
I've seen the little boxes describing how they do it, because they do it at Disney at the Haunted Mansion. They use it for that whole big dinner scene, like in the dining room where the ghosts are all moving around and stuff. And it's interesting when you see how they really do it, but it's very effective.
So taking science and really on a technological aspect, utilizing computers, I believe would be a huge step into allowing us easier feats of illusions and magic. Now, one aspect that I would really like to have a thorough understanding of is being able to have direct communication with atoms and energy. Because if you can have direct communication with atoms and energy, telekinesis, boom, it's there. Being able to make an inanimate object move and being able to use that scientific understanding and having a select few of people know how to do it, I think that would be a really great funding for me to go for and make me the next magician to change the ideology of magic.
Well, there is that one magician who I guess he was supposed to have died, but he didn't die yet, and he has a couple documentaries out about him. But his wife has there's people they call the Grinders. There's a group in Pittsburgh that does it. His wife has implants, and I think she uses some of them to help her with her magic act.
Yes,
I'm sure you're probably familiar with that.
The Amazing Jonathan and Anastasia. Right. Yeah, so Anastasia, she does walk around, and people do know, and she talks about it, where she has magnets inside of her, in her fingers and in her forearms, and she utilizes it to move inanimate objects, metal pieces, or if you're swallowing needles, she can regurgitate it and have it displayed upon her as if they're levitating right there. I actually went to go and see if my skin would be strong enough to go and get one set into me, because I would like to be able to utilize that just with a pen on the table, moving it back and forth. I think, the amount of people who would have that in their body is not many. So, or even if we had an opportunity to have a really dynamic contact lens where you could, look at, this might get a little sci-fi, but where you could look at someone and instantly have, their social media feed or their profile of Facebook or the LinkedIn pop up where you can read information. It'd be an incredible opportunity to attempt to show that you are able to tell someone's personal information or their future about what they're applying for in a job or where they've just been the last few minutes, versus having to use cold readings or a type of mentalism feat that we utilize to retrieve information from people, or even utilizing another form of equiloquy, which is where I can say a bunch of words to you and make you lead to choosing an answer that I want you to choose just through conversation like this. So having technology in that regards, and if I have the funds for it, I would take advantage of 125%. We have a gentleman who's working in New York. Let me, I don't want to mispronounce his name. Will you give me just one moment? Mm-hmm. Marco Tempest. Marco Tempest is taking magic to the next level, and he gave a presentation for us, and he utilized an algorithm where he controls the drones that he has on stage, where they're able to move around him in a sequence based on the algorithm, and they communicate with him directly using motion sensor. So as he moves in this direction, they'll go and follow him. When he's up on stage and he gives the presentation, it thoroughly looks like that he's taking the drones and moving them, with his hand, as if he has power to take advantage of the computers inside of them. So when he brings, what he's doing is he's merging the two, science and then the performing arts aspect, and making it appear as magic. So if you get an opportunity, Steele, when we get off, to look up Marco Tempest, he might be a really great guy to have on. He's doing a lot of great work over there at New York and with the tech industry, and trying to really configure on how he can bring that aspect to our entertainment or our little world.
Yeah, fantastic. Mark, yeah, we'll have a look.
Mark
Always
Tempest,
happy. Yeah. We'll have to have a look and get him on, because always happy to talk to people interested in anything that's positive. Hey, so what I was wondering is technology. Yeah, what about the rise? Do you still see a future for stage performance, or do you think it's all going online with Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat, and because there's a rise of some of these big mega magicians who are street performers essentially, but they broadcast onto these social media networks and get a lot of traction. Is stage dying, or is stage only just beginning its life and is going to be this sort of mixture and merger, or what's going on with the social media world?
So one of the things that we're able to do now with technology is we're able to take the grand illusions of stage and not need them anymore. So with cameras, we can bring people up on stage and do close-up magic to them and have it displayed on TV. However, you can also take a video of someone's Instagram feed and use, kind of breaking the code here, but you can use video technology to appear as if you're pushing something through the screen that's projected on a stage, and you can pull it off on the other end. So do I think that it's kind of dying? I think the old school grand illusions aspect is yes, and and the younger generation, us kids, are really kind of coming in and taking advantage of how they're able to change the game around. So half and half. I think personally people want fast, quick information, magic right in front of their eyes. A lot of times we have to utilize camera work to not fully display what we're posting on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube. And that's a little personal rule that we have within our community. So instead of showing the entire aspect, a lot of magicians will just watch it right away and go, or hobbyists will watch it right away and go, oh, I know how it's done, and they won't finish the trick. It's really kind of like a 50-50. It kind of depends on the performance aspect, because yeah, you can still have technology playing a role, but you still need the individual performer to give the presentation. So, having like a full-blown robot up on stage doing magic, it's been done a couple of times, but it's not the same as, a personalization that you have when you go and see a grand show. Does that help?
Yeah,
Did I kind of answer your question there?
Yeah, yep, and also kind of I was thinking as well, because when you scroll through your Facebook feed, you see these guys and they're just on the street. They just do card tricks on the street, and these guys get multi-million views because they go to London, especially these ones who hop around either America or Europe, because they get to go to all these different countries. That one day they're in Rome, the next day they're in Germany, and they just literally go up to people on the street and they just say, they throw it up on Instagram. It's all cut up nicely.
It's all cut up nicely. It's exactly right. It's all cut up nicely.
Yeah, is that the future of magic right there? Is that what it's going to be? This sort of street performance? Because street performance has come back. I mean, in that way, it's come absolutely round, done a circle, and it's come back. And they've utilized social media, whereas you're saying stage is sort of either stagnating or whatever, or evolving, or having a transitionary phase or whatever. But yeah, this street performance stuff, people really love it on Facebook and Instagram.
It's an immediate way to get a kick. So it's an immediate gratification, and we've learned to not show the entire process of walking up, doing the interaction, and we show the powerful, the prestige, so to speak, kind of the ending climax to get people's attention, and that's how they get those likes. I think street magic is definitely coming back. A big contributor to that, in my opinion, is David Blaine, with his special back when, late 90s, early 90s, mid 90s, when he was creating close-up magic and giving people that instant gratification and then showing live audiences that. It was a huge hit. I believe strongly that the busking aspect of strolling close-up magic is it. I mean, that's my specialty. I go in and I perform strolling table magic for inanimate groups or for smaller groups. I would prefer to do that than be on stage, because it's right there in front of you and you can see it more than having something drawn out.
Cool. Yeah. Go.
And today we're now even utilizing magic or the technology of our cell phone devices to make things appear in the phone and then having it come out, or taking the phone and smashing it and then restoring it back to one piece. So there still is a bit of sleight of hand that needs to be done. However, this is a phenomenal tool that allows us to take it to the next level, and the younger generation is jumping on that, and they're coming up and becoming very creative, and they're taking a lot of the old books of magic, such as Mark Wilson, and taking those ideas and they're revamping them, because we have so many theories in what we can do in this physical world with what we have, theories of magic. So we're able to take them and add just that next little touch of technology, and it makes it into something that was just vague before into incredible,
So I did have a question. Now, where does the magnificent Trenton Caine see himself in the future? Now, of course, I see you, since we were on the transhumanistic thing, being the first magician to play in Vegas for over 100 years, of course. But where do you see yourself? Where would you like to be?
So magic's a really great utility tool for me. It's gotten me, it's fed me, it's gotten me to meet a lot of great people such as yourself, and to travel throughout the world with it. But one thing that I want to do. My future is educating people on the future of themselves, and I'm utilizing magic as entertainment. So it's, you know, a little bit of talk, then magic, then talk, to keep their attention. So I'm working on a project right now to create a presentation to go and teach people how to think outside the box and how to observe their surroundings and to kind of really think more of what's next and how they can push themselves and then their personal group and community to take advantage of what we have in our tools today so that they can go on. So we call it keynote speaking, and that's a genre where I'm going to go. So instead of actually doing stage shows of grand illusions, you know, it's going to go up and be up there talking, and I'm going to utilize magic to keep them entertained, you know, while I'm giving my speeches.
Very cool. Very, very cool.
Yeah. Las Vegas magician would be great, but there needs to be a twist, and people want to know what's next. But really, people want to be told what was going to be next. And if it's the right idea, and you bring it and present it to them properly, and keep them engaged, then yeah, I'll take that, and I'll go and present someone's technology on stage for them and show them with my, you know, communication skills and push it out for other people to come and jump on the bandwagon. You know, give me a robotic arm and I'll cut mine off and show them how.
Give you two extra arms to do tricks with. You know?
And I'm down for that.
Feel like General Grievous. You just, you know, do whatever you want. Yeah, that's amazing. Wow. Yeah, well, Mr. Kerecz, what about you? What's your relationship with magic? You mentioned you grew up watching magicians every now and again, and you read some books. What's your relationship with magic?
Well, science and magic is always, to me, they kind of intertwine in your life. I mean, I think there's lots of things that are magic that you hope someday you can do through science, I think. I used to have karate studios and do a lot of the mind over body type things and displays of sticking swords through my side and hanging myself and the hairpins through the arms and stuff. And some of that stuff borderlines, shall we just say borderlines on magic, shall we say? But you don't want to give away the tricks of the trade to some of the martial artist demonstrations either. Some of the martial artist demonstrations are actually not magic and aren't mind over matter, but are actually just physics. So you know, so there is. Let me just say, there have been some displays I've done for my studios that borderline on crossing the boundaries sometimes. You know, is that a safe way to say that, Trenton?
Yeah, totally.
But I've always loved magic. I mean, to be able to mesmerize people like that, I think would be amazing, especially large crowds. And I mean, I even liked. I guess is anybody here other than me old enough to remember the Bill Bixby show where he was the magician?
Not me. I've seen a couple of them.
You've seen a couple of the episodes, but he was a magician that then used his magic to actually, you know, help solve crimes and save people and stuff. And that was it was. I would call it a cross between I don't know, James Bond, a magician, and Mission Impossible, sort of. But that was a cool show, and it had a different like a practical application of magic where he would fool people and do illusions, and it enabled him to help people, and that was an interesting show too. But I think every little kid has seen magic and wanted to be able to, and hope that some of it was real, or that there was a possibility that someday some of that stuff could be real, or even more than real. I mean, I think it gives you hope. I think magic gives people hope, and that's important.
And you know,
all of us
having, you know, there are people that I come across who that don't like magic, and definitely don't believe it's real. But what it does do is it makes them think, how is that done? So then they're the real, they deconstruct what they saw, and if they think that they can do it, they'll go down a piece of paper and try to figure out how it's done. And a lot of times it could be invented in a completely new way. Steele, what do you think? How do you think there could be a part where magic could come in, or has it even helped us get to where we are with science and technology today?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it depends on what you talk about when you say magic. Well, a lot of what we're talking about here is basically performance magic, where you're trying to almost entertain an audience into a certain state of mind where they're left wondering what just happened. Okay, how like Houdini himself was saying, how did you make that card go from the center of the pile to the top of the pile? I don't get it. It disobeys the laws of physics. It disobeys the laws of common sense. It doesn't make sense, right? So in that entertainment form of magic that we're talking about, whether that be, again, escaping boxes, coin tricks, tricks with ropes, the Indian rope trick is magic. That's something that's driven people mad, trying to discover that sort of stuff. It's an interesting conception of magic. That sort of magic is an interesting conception because it's there to inspire and to leave people in awe. It's there to draw people into an experience and leave them saying either what is happening in life, because especially for Western audiences or audiences that are a part of a large civilizational matrix, you're condensed, post-industrial revolution, you're condensed into specialization, which is the most efficient form of society. So your specialization is your world. If you're a doctor, you're a doctor. If you're a machine mechanic, you're a machine mechanic. If you're a lawyer, you're a lawyer. You don't really venture outside of that specialization because it's unprofitable to do so, and everything you do is out of a hobby or out of a personal interest. You're not an astronomer unless you're an astronomer. Otherwise, you're a hobbyist. You're a hobby astronomer, right? So magic is there to take people out of that specialization matrix that they're in, out of that form of capitalism, out of that specialized skill set, and into a whole new realm where they actually question what they're doing. And I think that does that very well. But if you go back in time, this changes and adapts in radical ways. You go right back to the beginning of time, magic was used as a form of not so much as entertainment, although it might have been for pharaohs or such, creating snakes out of hats in Egypt or whatever, as a way to entertain kings. And I'll go forward on that notion in a second. But magic was also used as a form of a tool of societal shaping. So you had magicians who worked, let's go to Egypt for a second, or anywhere, but the magicians, they worked a job. They worked in the king's court, or they worked in temples to create magic tricks or to create magic out of potions and stimulus in order to guide society on certain paths, and the goods of the paths that they generated. What did they generate? They generated luxury resources, because the magicians would demand certain resources. They would demand food, gold, iron ore, copper, bronze, alchemy stuff, because they're always busy making potions. So the magician throughout society, especially in the ancient to early ancient to basically Rome, formed a very important function of demanding luxury resources, so that everybody underneath that structure was now forced, in a way, through benevolence or through societal contract, to generate luxury resources. in order to enhance the human imagination, which is a really important thing. So you had these people sitting around generating magic and generating luxury resources underneath of them. That was really important for the human imagination and really important for the advancement of the human evolutionary species. As we became, as society, especially Western society, became more skeptical of this magic sort of stuff because of especially Jesus Christ making a landing in the Judeo-Christian emphasis becoming more prominent, you saw a waning of magic, and you saw, instead of magic where witches and warlocks and all this were harassed and sort of put down, and even inventors, even people with different mindscapes were put down by the church. You actually saw a rise of the magician. He changed tact. He just went undercover. He's a chameleon, and he became the jester. He became the joker, and he communicated the same sort of tactical, amusing message of generating those luxury resources, still hanging out in the king's court, still doing all that, still entertaining the crowd, but now he's a jester, and now he's doing it linguistically, now he's doing it through stories, and he's still doing the same premise of entertaining the audience and making them imagine the different landscapes of the mind. And then after that, you get the re-rise of the magician in a more classical sense, but in a more entertaining sense, as we're talking about now. Through the and you end up with modern sort of magicians, which is it's an interesting, but that chameleon moment, it's extremely interesting. Then you have the other side of the magician as well, and that's the witch and the warlock and the wardrobe. But it's also in different cultures. It's the shaman. It's the chief advisor. It's the guy who smokes the peyote. Because they take on different forms in different societies, and these people escape into the simulacras of the mind. Okay, so maybe they don't have the cool card tricks. But these again are the same people. They're the magicians. They're the luxury demanding side. They're the great thinkers. They're the people that put on the headdresses. And these people used the technology, nature's gifts through alchemy, whether they're mixing stuff in the rainforest, or they're just smoking peyote or tobacco or whatever. And now you've got, on the other side of the world, you've got the same people, who are the shamans. And you can't just talk about Egypt and magicians without talking about the being over there, the Aztecs, the priests, or whatever, the same sort of thing. I think the magician is a multifaceted character. He's transient. He's a chameleon. He changes, he switches. But I think fundamentally underneath the substrate that he has the same message. And the message is life is kind of this, it's a different way than building the iPhone. It's not the Steve Jobs, but it's the same thing. Put a dent in the universe and you can do what you want. And what these people are trying to tell us throughout history is that life isn't always what it seems. There can be different conceptions to life, different tricks to life, different ways to look at life that really make you question reality. And I think for a post-industrial society that's been specialized into a hilt through Polish sort of school indoctrinational processes where you're forced to sort of really dig into a subject, when you hit that idea, that's something really amusing and can fill a ton of seats.
That's well put, man.
That's the long version of what I said before, where they used to be they used to be considered the wizards and the scientists, and it all blurs together, because in the old days it did all blur together. They were the nutritionalists, they were the scientists, they were the entertainer, they were the advisor. It's kind of like
it's a type of person, and they're trying to communicate a specific message. And I endorse this notion of Isaac Newton and Pythagoras. I thought that was a fantastic the way conception, image to conjure up. I thought that was that's a great way.
they I don't mean to interrupt you, but they say that in the tarot, the first card of the tarot is the fool, and the fool is the man that has a stick on him carrying inside of his chalice and his coins, and as he goes around, he's looking to find out how and what am I doing, and then over time he becomes aware, and he starts to critically think, and then he learns the language and the laws and the science of what's going on and how to make things better for himself, and he transforms into the magician because he met the magician, and the magician is the one that is able to say, think, show, do. There's more to it than this. And I
on these enhanced on these massively enhanced DMT trips, for example, when you go down and down into the chasms, beyond, and you end up in these rooms, for example, they talk about these self-dribbling basketball simulacras of light creatures, these what Terence McKenna calls self-transforming elf machines, which are basically little tiny jewels of light that are basically love. They're essentially just love personified, and they say things like we love you and we want you, and you have to just look at these balls of what do they call those Fabergé eggs, right? The Fabergé eggs. They create these Fabergé eggs out of nothing. They spin them around and they say this, but those little guys down there, they say they're the jester. They say they're the fool. And who corroborates this on a transhumanist level is somebody like no other than Isaac Asimov, right? And he writes science fiction, talking about robots and all this sort of stuff. And one of his famous characters is the Mule. Okay, and the Mule is a character, a very interesting character. He is a mutated guy who has all sorts of funny shapes and funny angles. He's not a magician, so to speak, but he kind of is. But he's designated a fool, but he's actually the secret leader of the whole universe. He runs the whole galaxy at that time. He actually runs it, and people just think he's a fool. People just think he's the weirdo, and he presents himself as the weirdo, but actually he's the puppeteer pulling all the strings over the whole galaxy. And so yeah, it's all the magician is, and I think that's the secret of the magician is they understand that life can be poked and prodded, and you can maneuver it in a certain way, and I think that's terribly interesting.
I think that's terribly interesting too, especially how you just put it. I think you think the same way, man.
I don't know how much more time you do have, Trent. Do you have to get going? I forget how much time you said you had.
I'm here for a little bit.
Okay. Just wanted. I had a question though for Trenton. You haven't mentioned how people, if they're interested in you, how they can find out about you. Any websites or any ways they can look into what you're doing or where you are at or what's happening with you?
So I still hand out business cards, but I found out here in Los Angeles the best way for people to get a hold of you is through Instagram. So it is Trenton Caine Magic is my Instagram name, TrentonCaine Magic. And yeah, that's true. I don't really carry business cards with me because when I go to hand one out, they just say, hey, give me your Instagram. And I stay in contact with a lot of people on there. So I do direct communication.
So Steele will be your next new friend on Instagram, right, Steele?
Steele, do you interact with your Instagram?
I'm terrible on social media. I can't wait till I have enough money just to outsource all that bloody crap.
Hey, man, I tell you, dude, I ended up stopping the Snapchat, the Facebook, and everything, and I spent since May figuring out how to kind of really utilize this Instagram aspect, and it takes a lot of your time, to be honest.
Yeah, no,
I can't wait. I
try, and everybody wants me on these different platforms. They say, LinkedIn or Insta or this one. I just want to pay someone just to
to take care of it.
Take it off my hands. I don't care. But yeah, no. Yeah, but I'll if I have Instagram, which I think I do, I'll follow you.
100%. Yeah, so that's the best way. I'm in the works. I won't be launching my presentation until February. I got a 13-week course deadline. We got 13 weeks left, so to speak. But a lot of my interaction on Facebook is primarily about my life, and then how, what it's like to be living as a magician, and going and doing the experiences that I get to partake in, and then if anyone happens to be in Los Angeles and wants to come to the Magic Castle, you're more than welcome to let me know, and reach out, and you can be my personal guest, and I'll bring a suit and tie, and I'll take you and entertain, and you can see the technological aspect that we have to do in order to make people laugh, smile, and think.
Or you did what I did, and I ran to the Burbank Walmart quick and got some extra dress clothes that I didn't have with me.
Yeah.
Because the event I was there for, I didn't need to be dressed quite as well as they want you for at the Magic Castle. So, yeah, that's a great place to go. And Trenton was very nice to get me in there and show me around, and that was nice. And he does a great job of doing that.
Steele, my housemate right now, just flew in from Australia. He's originally from Sydney, so I'm living with an Australian right now, and he's a great guy. So if you happen to make
Can you
your way
understand his English?
It took me a little bit. Yeah. Now it's been 6 days now, and I can figure out what he's saying. But really, really great dude. The Australians are fantastic. I love it.
Oh,
and
that's good.
I wish that he knew some magic so I could see what kind of, cultural magic he has. But everyone from all over the world has their own types of ideologies and their stuff. I really want to thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
I hope it was a nice little change for you. And I'm looking forward to seeing how everything with the Transhumanistic-Party is moving forward. And if you happen to have anyone that you happen to bring on the show that I could, network with, so I can see how I can expand my art and my work in that field, how I can merge. That's what I really would love to do, because I'm very tangible, man. I can move around and be a chameleon, and help others.
Well, you know where to find us now. We're here at Detonation. Yeah, contact me anytime you want. Let's do it. We're very interested working with all types of people to enhance this movement, and all the best with your shows. It sounds like a lot of fun. It sounds like a great time. I'm here in Melbourne. There might be some magic shows. If I do, I'll send them to you, and I'll say, hey, look, I've been inspired to hit up some magic. So that's fantastic, Mr. Kerecz. Thank you as always, bringing me these fantastic guests. Magic is.
Oops!
Whoa.
You gotta stop that. Oh.
Excuse me, man. I apologize.
It's sort of like a hairball, only different.
Yeah, that's what happens. Eat, sleep, breathe magic, guys.
So
if you've just joined us, actually, you can go back in this. If you've just joined us, you can actually go back in this talk and actually see some other magic tricks there. The one that fooled Houdini, that's there as well. No, thank you very much, and it's been fantastic, and So, Mr. Kerecz, what were you going to say? Sorry.
Oh, I was just joking that it's like a cat getting a hairball. He was licking cards all day, so now he had some stuck in his throat, and he had to get them out.
It's the worst when I have the flu. All right, guys. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Check out Mr. Caine's website. Mr. Kerecz, I'll see you soon. That's Transhumanist-Party. That's Detonation. Putting death out of business.
Yeah, like that. Trunks of Caine magic. Keep it real, guys.